You're listening to the Reds Podcast.
This is episode number 52. This is part one of a two-part series on how to make money with a book. We're discussing business book models. We've got three for you on this episode. One of them where you can make money with your book without selling a single copy. That's coming up on this episode of the Red Podcast.
This is the Red Podcast. Real entrepreneur development. Make more money. Work less and live a life of freedom. No BS advice that really works. Here's your hosts, David Hooper and Laurel Staples.
I was taking our dog for a walk around the neighborhood the other day, and as you know, David, we live in a neighborhood with a fire station.
It's an urban neighborhood.
As I was walking right by the fire station, the intercom comes on and it startles me, and it's this woman on the intercom going, "Douglas, where are you? I need you to call. Where are you?" And I'm like, "What? Oh, is she talking to me?" No, she's talking about Douglas. So I kind of stopped for a minute. And I think what she's trying to do is talk on the intercom inside the fire hall, and she's talking outside the fire halls.
Well, the fire hall is an open thing. They've got to get the fire engines in there, so it's like an airplane hangar.
It is, but I think she was on the outside speaker on accident, and she was calling for this guy and kept going, "Does anyone know where he is? This is not a joke. This is not, I need him now." And she was flipping out on this intercom, and I was looking around like, is anyone else hearing this? Is this just me? You know, you don't know if you're being punked or something like that.
Yeah.
So It was an interesting experience.
Well, there's a lot of testosterone in the fire hall. I imagine it's a tough job as a female to deal with those guys.
She wasn't making it look easy. Let's just say that.
Well, I'm surprised there's any woman in there at all. Honestly, I see those guys at the grocery all the time. They take 2 or 3 carts around, buying huge amounts of food for all the firemen.
Are they making chili?
Fireman's chili, yeah, of course.
See, that's what I envision them making in there. It's just like making a big pot of chili and sitting around. And
It looks like it because they're buying in bulk.
there you go.
They're in the produce aisle, just going for it. So like a fire engine, this podcast is RED, although RED stands for Real Entrepreneur Development. We are for authors, bloggers, podcasters, musicians, anybody with a message. If you've got something that you want to spread, this is the podcast for you. Welcome. Thank you for listening. There's a problem we're going to talk about today, Laurel. You may soon be facing this problem. Fortunately, you know me, and I've been through it, and that is the problem for authors and people that are working on books. There's little to no money in books for most authors. Everybody thinks, hey, I write a book, it's going to be great, I'm going to make a ton of money. That's not usually how it works.
And I don't know where that rumor came from. Very few people make money writing a book and actually physically selling the book itself.
Yeah, but look at the authors that we know. That's where it came from. It comes from the Stephen Kings, the John Grishams. I used to live down the street from John Grisham when I lived in Mississippi. And when I say down the street, that's not really fair because this guy had like acre upon acre, hundreds and hundreds of acres, and like a farmhouse. Huge amount of land. So down the street, even his next door neighbor was probably a mile away. But this guy's getting money hand over fist. We know the authors that are on TV. We know the authors that are making movies about their books. And the ones that we see, these guys are making money. So everybody thinks they can be part of this.
That's the problem, is we know about them because they're the anomaly. They're the ones that are actually doing it and making the money, but it's just not very common. But that doesn't mean that writing a book is a bad idea. In fact, writing a book, and I'm going to cross my fingers while I say this, but writing a book is a very good idea, and it can help you in your business in multiple ways, but it's not just the sales of the book that's going to do much for your business.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk about different business book models today. A book, even if you don't sell a copy, it's still a very good solution for you and your business. It gives you instant credibility. It's going to be a great lead generator for other business. But how do you get around the things like people copying books, prices dropping? I get great books all the time on Kindle for 99 cents, $2.99. How can you make money like that? That's what we're going to talk about today. I just hit on one, Laurel, and that's the first business model, and that's using your book as a lead generator, lead generation books. I did that with my last book. It was called Six Figure Musician, and if you're interested in seeing how that works, you can go to musicianbook.com and see a lead generation site. A lot of times this is a free book. It's a low-cost book, but what it will enable you to do is get access to hard-to-reach clients. It will facilitate referrals, both from clients and also affiliate and referral partners. It's a really good opportunity if you just want to get the word out about what you're doing. It provides tremendous value. When you think about it, a book could be your life's work. It certainly was for me in this book I'm talking about at musicianbook.com. You're giving that away, and that value brings them in because people want more.
And I want to clarify something here, David, because your book is not free, but you give it away for free. So you can buy your book on Amazon for, it costs as much as a regular book, but you give it away for free as a lead generation tool.
That's a great point. There's a PDF version for free. There's a Kindle version that will cost you a little bit more than that. Audible has an audiobook. There's a hardback. There is a paperback. So yeah, there are different opportunities. And that is certainly one way to do it when you're giving a book away for free. A lot of times why people give away books, it's because of the back end. It's not the upsell on a physical book like I'm doing or an audio book, but it's because of their speaking, it's consulting, it's coaching. That's very, very common.
That is one of the biggest lead generations that people use. It's they give away their book and they funnel people from the book onto their mailing list and then either get what you said, the speaking gigs, coaching, consulting, sell online programs, things like that. But you mentioned earlier, David, and I wanted to add a little more detail to this. You said access to hard to reach clients. And that's something that I've seen work with entrepreneurs before is say you're a consultant and you're trying to get in with small businesses that maybe do graphic design or something like that. Well, you write some book that adds value to them that they would get something out of. And you might have been in the past calling them and trying to get the CEO on the phone and trying to reach them, and they don't return your calls. They don't look at your marketing material. They don't care about your brochure. All of a sudden, they get this book from you for free that talks about some of the issues that they're facing, that's relevant to them, that adds value to their lives. Now, all of a sudden, you have more of an opportunity to get that sort of client on the phone. So that hard to reach client now starts to pay attention to you because you're the expert. Books are going to get a lot more attention than any sort of brochure or business card or sales video or anything like that because it gives you instant credibility and it makes you the expert.
Right, totally. You can send that book through Federal Express, UPS. Sometimes I send it directly through Amazon because who's not going to open an Amazon package? So when I want to do that, I've definitely done that with my book. Book is a lead generation tool. It is a great opportunity. And just because you're using it as a lead generation tool, just because you are giving away some copies for free, doesn't mean that you can't sell it.
Absolutely. I think you need to do both because I think you need to sell it to show that this book has value. Maybe on Amazon it's $19.95 and then you're sending it to someone for free and you're giving them this value for free. I think that merits the book and merits the action that you take.
You know, I've actually done that. Sometimes I'll overprice a book. I had an audiobook one time, priced it at $39.95. The headline, $39.95 for them, free to you. It gives that perceived value. It built a huge mailing list for me, and that was just an audiobook. So think about what you can do with a real book.
You can give your own book away, but also you can have your clients give your book away. If you have a client that just raves about your services, go ahead and say, hey, I am happy to send out my book for free to anyone that you want to talk to me about, or anyone you want to give it to. That's going to give you credibility as well because it's a recommendation from somebody else sending out your book. You could even put your client's note with it when you send it out. And that gives your client the opportunity to provide value for the people that they know. And it gives you access to their people. You can also do this with your affiliate partners, your referral partners. Say, I will send a free book to anyone that you think would get something out of it.
I've done that before. I've given away my book, for example, to an organization that was a membership organization. Hey, let me give you 1,000 books. This organization dealt with the type of people that I wanted to deal with. I'll give you 1,000 books. Get it to your best members. When they renew, you send them a copy of my book as your gift. They'll think that it's from you, but it also helps me because it gets me in the hands of those, as we said, hard to reach people that I wouldn't normally be able to get. Plus, I get the endorsement.
Exactly. And they can send it or you can send it. So either one there. But keep in mind that if you're giving away something for free or you're sending it out to a lot of people, again, you have to have that back end.
Got to make the numbers work.
You have to funnel it towards something. Don't just send it out and get people on your list and maybe figure that out one day. Like, have a plan for how you're going to make money off this approach.
Speaking of money, it's worth saying that there are some authors that do make money, and a lot of it through high volume single unit sales. And what I mean by that is the guys in bookstores, the Tim Ferrisses of the world. We've talked about Stephen King, the John Grishams, that are selling one book at a time to one individual at a time, and they do it tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even in the millions. Can you make money doing that? Absolutely. Can most people make a good living doing that? I believe that they can. Don't believe the hype that there really is no money in books. There is money in books. It's not necessarily that John Grisham kind of money, though, where you're going to have a huge farm in Mississippi and down the street, even your next door neighbor is going to be a mile or two away. It's not necessarily that kind of money, but it can provide people with a good living. I want to let you know that that's possible. Not really what we're talking about here today, though. We're talking about kind of the behind-the-scenes secrets of authors, the way they're making money that you might not be aware of. When it comes to high volume, the best way to do that, bulk sales.
Exactly. I was talking to a girl yesterday and she writes romance novels, specifically romance ebooks, and she is making in between $10,000 and $20,000 per month with her ebooks. She has New York Times bestsellers in there, and she still has a day job because this just kind of happened to her all of a sudden. She just liked writing. So that is an example of a fiction author that has done something like this. I think when you're putting out a business book, there's just not as much of a frenzy around it. Tim Ferriss, again, I think is an anomaly. That's why we all know about him. If you're writing a fiction book, you probably have more of a chance to sell books for the sake of selling books. But if you're writing a business book, keep it focused on what is the back end of the book.
Well, there certainly are great opportunities for nonfiction business books to have something other than just the book. Most nonfiction business books, 5,000 copies or less. That's most of them. Not to say you can't do more, and that's why it's worth mentioning. One of the ways that people are doing a lot more sales is through bulk sales, and that's lots of sales in one place. Laurel, we've talked about this event before. New Media Expo. Earlier this year, we were at New Media Expo. There was a man named Scott Stratton there. He's known as Unmarketing because that was his first book. Had a book called QR Codes Kill Kittens. And when you went in to go see Scott speak, there's a book on every seat. He didn't put those books there just because he's a nice guy. That was actually part of the deal for him speaking. The event had to purchase those, and that's how you sell a lot of books at once.
Although we also had another speaker at that event. Was it Marshall Silver?
Marshall Silver, yes. He hypnotized everybody, had some people up on stage eating fire.
He did, but he also gave away his book. But he had kind of a different approach than Scott Stratton. Something I just want to point out is kind of what not to do is this man was totally bald. And he gave away a book in which it was obviously very old because he was on the cover and he had a full head of hair and it didn't even look like him. And he said at the beginning of his talk that, oh, I just found these in the basement and I just wanted to give them away, which didn't give them as much value in the consumer's mind as something that was more relevant and more recent. Yes, it's a free book, but you want people to think that you're giving them a lot of value. So be sure to give them something a little more recent.
That could have totally been turned into a back-end lead generator. He could have said, hey, we just happened upon these. wanted to bring them to you because I wanted to give them to you as a gift. And I think he kind of did that, and that might have been where he was going with that, Laurel, because it is reciprocity. If he's going to give you something, you're more likely to buy from him or pay attention to him. But I agree with you. There was a little bit of a disconnect. Marshall Silver, shaved head, didn't have that shaved head. It was 20 years ago that he wrote the book that we got. Actually, it's a very, very great book. I've got it here on my desk right now.
It doesn't make it not relevant, but you just don't want to say anything that makes the value of your book seem less than it actually is.
Laurel, I've actually got a story that involves me, not with a print book, but with an audio book, and it involves bulk sales and the fact that I sold the contract to a company. They used it for lead generation, and it was also lead generation for me. So you can see how these things kind of mash together. And you can get more than one of these business models, put them together, and then come up with your very own. What this company did, they took about 80,000 audiobooks off my hand, and they used them as lead generation for themselves. But because my book was getting into the hands of their customers, it was also lead generation for me. So I was able to make money on the front end and back end because of the lead generation aspect that was added to this.
If someone wanted to go the bulk sales route with their book, David, what would be like the first step that they would take?
The first step that I would take if you want to go for bulk sales is to get connected with a company, a corporation, an educational institution, somebody who does a lot of volume, somebody that has a lot of customers. For example, if you're talking about healthy eating, you might want to go to a restaurant. I saw something very interesting today, Laurel. It wasn't a book manufacturer, but it's something along these lines. She had a soap company, wanted to move a lot of soap. So what she did was put together an educational program about the importance of cleanliness and washing hands and hygiene, put together that educational program, then sold the educational program along with the soap. So she got people started on her soap. They had samples. They could take it home to their families. And she also sold a ton of soap just through that program. So you can do this any way that you want to, but it's usually done through companies, corporations, educational institutions.
Plus, don't be afraid to go to these corporations or talk to these people who you want to speak with and put your deal on the table. I see a lot of people having fear around that as, oh, they'll never buy my book. Oh, they're not going to do the bulk sale option. Just put it out there. You're providing a lot of value with your book, and they are trying to position you as the expert. If you're speaking at a corporation, if you're speaking to a group, they want to show that you have a lot of value, and giving away your book is a way for them to do that. So it's not just about you making some sales. It's really about them showing that you have expert status, credibility, and that you're offering a lot of value. So don't be afraid to reach out to people and make that offer.
Companies are looking for information all the time to help them get lead generation. Companies are looking for information that will help their clients comply with what it is that they're suggesting. For example, I go to a chiropractor. There's all sorts of information in there. The chiropractor didn't write it herself. She's licensed that. She's purchased it in bulk from people who do manufacture or do write that information. Laurel, you were at the dentist earlier today. They're going to give you something that tells you how to brush your teeth every time you go in there. It tells you how to floss, tells you how to do whatever gizmo they're trying to sell you. And that has to come from somebody. Your book could be part of that. If you're showing people how to make money, there are certain banks that you can get connected with. I almost did a deal, actually, speaking of banks, there's a local bank here in Nashville, Tennessee. They deal with musicians. That's their clientele. They will give loans based on future songwriting royalties. Obviously, the more money that these guys have in songwriting royalties, the more they're going to use a bank. So I was on the very verge, hasn't happened yet, and it still might happen, of getting my book in the hands of these bank customers. So you think, well, the music business, that has nothing to do with a bank, or whatever you're doing has nothing to do with a bank. You would be surprised. You can make these connections every which way possible, and there is a connection for you if you just sit down with a yellow pad and start thinking about it.
And I would say also keep in mind that you don't need to be on Good Morning America or something like that where you're reaching millions of people. You can reach a very tiny segment of that, but if it's your segment, the people that are going to be your future customers and your target market, you're going to be doing a lot better. So just hone in on who is your target market? Who can you connect with? What corporations, what people, what groups can you connect with that are going to be a good lead generation for you? Don't try to reach everybody. You're going to burn yourself out. So just hone in on the people that are going to be your customers down the road.
I'm going to sum up what we talked about today. In total, I've got 6 business book models for you. We've covered the first 3 of them here. The next episode, Red 53, will cover the other 3. What we talked about today, though, book as a lead generation, give away a free book, a low-cost book, try to get those hard-to-reach clients and get them on a back end of speaking, coaching, consulting. We've talked about the high-volume single-unit sales, which is what most people think of when they think of authors. However, keep in mind if you're working on a nonfiction book, a business book, the majority of those books sell less than 5,000 copies. That may or may not work for you. It is a possibility, though. That's why we're mentioning it. And if you want to sell a lot of copies, talk about 5,000, you could do it with a single purchase order, a single check, and one big shipment. Bulk sales, lots of sales in one place. I've done it. We've given examples of it. Scott Stratton has done it. Tons of ways to do that. If you've got questions about this episode, bulk sales, the book business, Laurel and I are always available to you. You can reach out to us via the web at redpodcast.com.
And if you like this episode or you enjoy other episodes of the Red Podcast, we are looking for reviews on iTunes and on Stitcher. So if you visit redpodcast.com, and there are icons there where you can reach iTunes or Stitcher, and we appreciate any feedback you give us on there.
Thanks so much for listening. Thanks for making Red such a great podcast and the great community that we've got behind it. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next time on the next episode of the Red Podcast.
You've been listening to Red Podcast, Real Entrepreneur Development. Subscribe today using iTunes, Stitcher, or via RSS at redpodcast.com.